I'd like to congratulate the students who are about to graduate. Very, very sincere congratulations. And I would like to add to the Chancellor's comments about the friends and partners and relatives who are sitting behind the graduates and who no doubt have put up with a fair bit over the last few years to get them where they are. So to you, thank you very, very much indeed. I just want to tell one little snippet of information about the building on Dawson Highway, which you probably know now is the office for the Department of Education. That building was called the Dawson Chambers. That's where we started here in Gladstone. And in 1984, the then Capricorn Institute of Advanced Education decided to refurbish the building, so they put a coat of paint on it. And they decided to have a big sign which would go across the top, which would say Dawson Chambers. Everything went beautifully, except that the workmen who put up the letters for Dawson Chambers put the M and the W's upside down. So if you stop and think about it, it came out as Dams and Chorbers. When Sue rang and asked if I would speak at this ceremony, I was surprised and I was flattered, and I immediately knew what I wanted to talk about. I want to relate a little story about a woman, a Tongan woman, who was my heroine. And this is going back a long way. This is going back 45 years. I don't know if you picked up, but when I was being introduced, it mentioned that I taught in Tonga for 2 years. I'm an Australian, not a Kiwi, by the way. So let's get that straight. But I did go to university in Auckland. How do we come to go to Tonga? At that stage, and I'm talking now about 1965, so it's a long time ago, folks, there was a scheme operated between various countries in the South Pacific and the New Zealand government called the Scheme of Cooperation. And what it was the New Zealand government agreed to provide staff and materials and assistance for one school in each of the separate countries. So Fiji had one, Tonga had one, the Cook Islands had one, etc. And that school did the New Zealand University entrance examination. So that school was the only route that a student there could take to go on to higher education. There was no other. And it was Tonga High School, the school that I was going to, which was the nominated school in Tonga. And just to give you an example of how tough it was to get into that school, every primary school child at the end of year 6 sat an exam, and we took the top 4%. So 96% of them didn't get in. So the other thing, just to give you a little bit of context, is that at that time, and probably still, Tonga was very much a subsistence economy. So for the most part, people lived in villages and they lived on what they could grow and cultivate. Very, very little money around. Not a lot of real poverty, but not a lot of wealth either. So that's what we were going into. Not long after we arrived, we were sitting down after dinner, and there was a knock on the door. So I went to the front door and opened it, and there was a middle-aged woman, and she had a basket woven out of a banana leaf, of fruit. And she introduced herself. She said, "My name is Melly Halu." Melly is Tongan for Mary. Said, "My name is Melly Halu, and this is my gift for you." We asked her in, but she wouldn't come in. She left. She had one tooth right there. Okay, and remember that tooth. It's going to be important. I had no idea what was going on. So next day I asked, when I went to school, I said, "What's going on?" And they explained to me. Sure enough, a couple of nights later, knock, knock, knock on the front door. There was Melly. There was another basket of fruit. Right? Now, by this time, I had found out that Melly had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. The eldest girl was Konai, Konai, Konai. The second daughter was Meliofa, and then she had a son, William. And she lived in a wooden hut, which would be no bigger than your kitchen at home. She had no electricity. The only running water was an outside tap. And there was no husband. She was a single mum. So she had brought up those 3 kids in that situation. And she said to us, would we look after her second daughter, Meliofa, while Meliofa finished her studies? And we said yes. Now, it's very, very, very obvious what the mother, Melly, was doing. She was trying to maximise the opportunity her children had to pass their examinations and go on to further study. And she was going to do everything she could to make sure that they got that opportunity. So, the second daughter, Meliofa, lived with us while she finished her exams, and it was an absolute delight having her. We had 2 young children at that stage, 2 girls, 1 4, 1 5, and they thought that Meliofa was the best thing since sliced bread, because Meliofa could never refuse a request for a second bedtime story, or a third one, or a fourth one. The school that we taught at, or that I taught at, again, was a delight. We had intelligent, motivated kids who were a pleasure to teach. There was only one downside to teaching at Tonga High School, and that is the monthly parent-teacher meeting. Because we would get a crowd of parents which would fill this space twice. Everybody had to come. And the format was that the headmaster had an agenda, so he would talk to the first item. That then had to be translated into Tongan, because a lot of the Tongan parents didn't have good English. And then anybody who wanted to respond would respond. And among the Tongans, oratory is much admired. It's not a tradition we have, but among them, someone who can orate has status. So it wasn't uncommon to have a response that went on for half an hour. And then that had to be translated into English. And so it went on. And it wasn't uncommon for those parent-teacher nights to finish at 2 o'clock in the morning. But we survived. Those 3 children, Konai was the eldest, Meliofa, the one who lived with us, Viliami. Konai is now a professor of education at the University of the South Pacific. She's an acknowledged authority on Pacific culture. She is a poet and she is a writer. The second daughter, the one who stayed with us, Millie Offer, became a dietitian. She worked in Brisbane and then went on to work for the Food and Agricultural Organisation and also for the South Pacific Commission. The boy, the youngest one, Viliami, he became an engineer and returned to Tonga. I'm telling you this story for two reasons, and I described Melly as my hero for two reasons. And the two reasons were her determination. She was not going to give in. If we had said, no, we won't look after Millie Offer, she would have gone and asked somebody else. And if they'd said no, she would have asked somebody else, and she would have kept on doing it until she found somebody who said yes. She was determined to give those children the best possible opportunity. The other reason that I admired Melly, the mother, was the value she put on education. Now, I don't have to talk to you about the value of education. Right? If you didn't value education, you wouldn't be here. But it's very easy to forget that there are large parts of the world where education cannot be taken for granted. And you've only got to think about the girl Malala in Pakistan, who was shot by the Taliban simply because she wanted to go to school. So Melly became my heroine for those two reasons. There's a little twist to the tale. I met Melly again a number of years later. She was having a ball. All of her children had succeeded. She spent 4 months with the eldest daughter. Then she spent 4 months with Melly Offer. Then she spent 4 months with Viliami. And then she started all over again and went from one to the other, having the most wonderful time. I told you to remember the teeth. She had a brand new set of dentures and a smile as wide as Sydney Harbour Bridge. Thank you very much.